Hey guys, Disaster Area here, with a new video again. Been a couple of weeks, first of many, I hope. Got quite a few things planned, and this one is on the new arrivals to the tier. So recently, as in like last week, we had a vote on the server Discord. Feel free to join if you want to be involved. Link will be in the description. And yeah, we had a vote to replace Bennett, Granbull, and Manetric. As it's ADV 50, the only true rule in running it is that there always has to be 50 Pokemon. So we had to find 3 Pokemon to replace them. Basically, the idea was these Pokemon were hardly viable, and we needed to find some that were viable. And in conclusion, we ended up selecting Sceptile, Xatu, and Hitmontop. So what I'd first like to go through is just why we got rid of the original Pokemon that we had, what these new ones do, and I'll be showing some sample sets as well. Maybe you can give them a go, build with them, and use them in the upcoming season, for which signups are now open. So first of all, the Pokemon that weren't so good. I don't have an on-stream prompt for this. You're just going to have to sort of enjoy this BKC podcast style. Bennett first is obviously it's slow and frail, but it did have obviously like high attack and an interesting move pool with like Will-O-Wisp, Thunder Wave, and so on. But really, just sort of the way it ended up was just wasn't very effective or dangerous. I mean, it's just got such a straight design because it's slow and hard hitting, but then it also wants to be a burn spreader, and it just doesn't really work. And also being so frail is not helpful as a spin blocker, especially when there's sort of not really anything else going for it. At least Misdreavus is like ground immune. Sableye has a secondary typing. So yeah, apologies if I got like a little bit of a sniffle as well. I had my like COVID booster a couple of days ago. I was still feeling a little bit, not under the weather, just like a little bit funny and a bit tired. But yeah. Anyway, with Bennett, it really felt like you'd rather just use like Misdreavus on almost every instance that you'd want a ghost type. And Sableye has advantages with the psychic community making it a great answer to offensive psychic types as well. So it had compression benefits that were different to Misdreavus, but Bennett it's just such an illogical Pokemon design that doesn't really function even in ADV 50. Granbull. Granbull's a bit funny. I don't feel like anyone really like explored it super hard, but once sort of Tauros came into the tier, it sort of felt even less useful. The thing is that Tauros does like the normal type choice banner with Intimidate much better because it's just faster, even though Granbull is slightly stronger. That speed of Tauros is just incredible compared to Granbull's, which is so like nothing. And you kind of need that when you're a normal type because like normal strength is as an offensive type with like a small number of resistances that you can then use coverage to manage. But when you're slow, then like the fact that you don't like really resist anything, and the fact that like there's a lot of switch-ins to you just like becomes a bit of an issue. And then like on top of that, normal does really need all the coverage it can get. So like Tauros, I mean CB Tauros is a bit of a different animal where you can run like dual stab, but if you don't go CB, then you end up like going mixed, so you can actually hit Fortress for something substantial. And I mean, it's not that Granbull didn't have the move pool to run like a mix set, like Return, Earthquake, Shadow Ball, Fire Blast, or something along those lines. But just like Tauros is better at that. To make use of it, you had to like go a bit further out and use like Heal Bell or Thunder, which are just like not great on a Pokemon without any defensive utility really. So yeah, just Tauros kind of helped make it obsolete, but it wasn't a particularly stunning Pokemon in the first place. Should be said that just because a Pokemon was like voted out doesn't mean it was like completely unviable and can never return. On a similar note, like Scyther was a contender potentially to return. On this vote, as some players felt like an SD set might have some merit. In the end, other options won out. But yeah, that's generally why Granbull sort of felt like a Pokemon worth being rid of at this point, where it wasn't really seeing much usage. I mean, there's a fair number of Pokemon that see much usage, but it also just didn't feel good to build with. It just suffered from like full move slot syndrome, being slow with like a lack of resistances, which is kind of like in a way very similar to Banette, where just like slow and lack of resistances, and then just his other traits aren't good enough when there's just like better options out there. Manectric as well it's a bit of a funny case, because if you've watched like replays of ADV 50, if you've seen the tournament, you see like, oh, this had good usage. It had like it was pretty good. What really happened was a realization that Electrode is just so much better. Which sounds so funny to say, like, really? Electrode? I mean, and that kind of mindset is probably what held us back in the first place from really taking Electrode as seriously as we should. It's like, so getting the obvious out of the way, of course, Electrode is faster, and that makes a difference against like Tauros, Crobat, newcoming Sceptile, outspeeding reliably like Kadabra, outspeeding Jumpluff. I mean, Tauros and Crobat in particular are pretty huge. But you say, well, it's weaker. And I mean, yes, it is a bit weaker, but it's not that much weaker, to be honest. Before Sceptile was in the tier, you could also sort of justify modest Electrode as well, because then you had Crobat was running Adamant and so on. So, I mean, the addition of Sceptile probably makes Electrode a bit weaker. But the thing is that it's actually bulkier as well as having a greater move pool. So really, it's only the power and Manectric's access to Raw, which nobody used anyway, that really made the difference. With the bulk, there is like a very good specific example of why it makes a difference. With Manectric, you had to stick 4 EVs, your spare 4 EVs in special defense to avoid being one-hit KO'd ever by Golduck's Hydro Pump without a critical hit. Obviously, once you stick spikes in the mix, all of that goes out the window. And Electrode will take a Hydro with spikes and still survive. And like that on its own is like a pretty big deal when you're talking about like an offensive check to like one of the most dangerous Pokemon in the tier. Beyond that, the move pool, it doesn't have both screens, sadly, just reflect, but you know, it's light screen, it's got explosion. There's Rain Dance, of course, is pretty good on a Pokemon that outspeeds the entire metagame naturally, as well as like some moves like that pair really nicely with Explosion anyway. Obviously, it's like Hidden Power and Thunderbolt, as Manectric had, and Subtoxic, which Manectric used, and Electric can use, but it almost feels like other options are just better a lot of the time. But it is an option, especially with like being bulkier than Manectric. That certainly doesn't hurt. But yeah, really, it's just like so much more versatile. It lands Thief as well, which could be useful, and Taunt, and you know, it's got a deeper move pool. And it's like, why Subtoxic a Lantern when you can just explode on it, and you know, and then your Golduck will go rampant potentially. Like ideas like that, it's just a lot more versatile in ways that are practical, as well as being faster and bulkier, and the trade-off just... I think if Manectric was left in the tier, it would still probably see some use, but just on paper, it just offers less. You know, like you don't want to be cleaned by like a late-game CB Crobat, for example, and like that's something that happens a lot because Crobat is amazing. And you know, just having Electrode there just like stops that to a degree. I mean, it doesn't stop it completely. It's not like a wall, but you know, resists aerial ace and it outspeeds it. So it gives you at least counter sweeping chances that are a bit better. So yeah, overall, Electrode sort of... the realization that Electrode had so much more going for it than Manectric is really what did Manectric in. Poor thing, I do love it. I love all these Pokemon, even the ones that we have to get rid of. But, you know, when you're designing a tier, when you're making the changes, it's not about that, unfortunately, is it? Well, it could be, but you won't get as fun of a game out of it if you do things that way. Anyway, on to the new Pokemon. We've got a Sceptile, we've got Xatu, and we've got Hitmontop. So I ended up, after sort of seeing the discussions, like when people started voting, I ended up changing the voting system a little bit to just be like a list of about like 13 different Pokemon, like the 3 original that were being dropped, and then like the 10 new ones. And like 10 possible new ones. And it was because like some people were voting for some either completely unviable options like Minun, like just if anything vote for Raichu, or voting for stuff that would be really disruptive like Tentacruel. And we largely wanted to avoid disruption because the seasons are starting now, and like anything that's disruptive as Tentacruel, we'd really want to test it quite thoroughly before using it in official tournaments. But Sceptile's sort of an exception to that, as we've discussed it for a long time, and ultimately it is just an offensive Pokemon, a one whose stab is resisted by a lot of types. So it will still be disruptive because it's faster than everything not named Crobat or Electrode. But there are a lot of checks to it. But let's sort of like first look at like what can it actually do. Subseed set. It's obviously it's a fantastic Subseed user because it's just that fast, and it's pretty frail. It's not a Deoxys attack or something. It's got something. And yeah, just Subseed on a Pokemon that fast is just never bad, and that's a pretty straightforward assessment. There are like obviously like some limitations to it. We'll get to that, but just take a look at the other sets first. The mix set, of course, like not having the substitute on it does increase the risk a bit. Although you compare it with like Subpass, for example. But it's got Dragon Claw and Earthquake, which hits Altaria, which resists the Grass Fire combination, and it hits Fires, which resist the Grass Fire combination. Pretty simple. Those like his best moves really to complement what he's got. It's also Earthquake also hits Muck, which is always nice. And then there's also the Empatire set, which has got this is a really cool set, and it would be awesome to see it be like really effective. Endeavor on such a fast Pokemon is pretty good because you can just get it off pretty reliably, and you don't have to run a Salac Berry with it. It's also got Overgrow, which boosts the power of Leaf Blade, and then you can like pair that with Pataya Berry and like boost things even more, and just becomes such a threat at low HP, which I think is just like that's pretty sick. That's all I gotta say. It's pretty sick. Whether that's better to use over the other two sets, I think is something that we'll see sort of players argue about. Maybe I'd like to see players sort of discussing that and trying out the different sets and seeing what ones work well for them. It might be sort of a case like the Subsea set's better for more conservative players, and like the Empatire one's good for like the really aggressive, like read heavy players, and just maybe it's a much better sweeper or something like that. I think that both sets have got a lot of merit. But in terms of the checks and counters, people are like, everybody in the server has been like really hyping it up as being just like this incredible, unbeatable Pokemon. And like, truth be told, it's just, I mean, maybe they're not putting it like that good, but it's pretty good. Pretty good. People are like, I mean, I put it as like A rank in the viability rankings to start off with, give sort of a sense of things. But there are a lot of checks. The first one is obviously you want to look at like ones that are leech seed to grass types, and I mean, Hidden Path Fire hits them super effectively, but some of them are pretty bloody bulky. Meganium's very bulky, Vileplume's very bulky as well. Credilli is not as bulky and it doesn't resist grass, but it doesn't have recover, so it really doesn't care about leech seed. Or Sceptile in the slightest. To be honest, like the only set that might bother it even is like the Pataya Berry set, and even then, not really. Like Credilli is probably, I don't know, it might well be like the best Sceptile answer in the tier, since it's got that instant recovery, but it's got other problems like being like huge spikes bait, which is not great against the Subseed set. But hey, give and take. But yeah, in terms of leech siege immunes, there's that. In terms of ground immunes, I think somebody says something along the lines of like all of Sceptile's best answers are grounded at least, and it's like it's just not true. Almost every grounded Pokemon is flying type. Obviously, there's two levitators in the tier, Misdreavus and Chimecho, and they're not great against Sceptiles, obviously. But all the flying types, or most of the flying types, are pretty decent. You've got Fearow. I mean, it's fine. It resists grass. All the flying types resist grass. Like Altaria also resists fire. Jumpluff is not a good answer, but Crobat's a great one, and one that people kind of want to run more of anyway, just in general, because it's just like such a great Pokemon, and it outspeeds Sceptile. So probably we'll see more Crobat, sorry, in this tournament. In the seasons compared to the off-season tournament because of Sceptile's presence, but we'll see. And then there's also like Mantine as well, which can like run protect and rest and stuff and just be annoying. Obviously, it's got like insane special bulk. So yeah, there's plenty of answers to Sceptile out there. Not so much like fire types. You've got like Wish Flareon as well. There's one with recovery. There's stuff like Rapidash and so on. Torkoal. You've got poison types like Murk, Nidoqueen, which can carry Raw. You know, there's so many answers out there. Not all of them are good, and like the Subseed set kind of doesn't really care unless they're a grass type, or if they're like not grounded. Like those are the two things that like really help against the Subseed set. But you know, just having reliable recovery like Clefable does, for example, just like massively can put a halt to Sceptile. It requires support to really get going there. And yeah, the mixed set, of course, is like good versus some of those. Like, I mean, obviously, Dragon Claw helps against Altaria, Earthquake against Mark. It's still kind of stuffed against like Crobat, but yeah, what can you do? Yeah, and in terms of stuff like Nollicid as well against like Sword Stance and stuff, but like how that deals with Fortress or ignores it is beyond me. It feels like there's better options. But that's Sceptile for you. Hitmontop and Xatu were thought to be less disruptive. I've only got one sample set here for Hitmontop because really Hitmonlee does like all the offensive stuff that Hitmontop could imagine doing like better. But as a defensive spinner, it's pretty interesting. The thing with Hitmontop as a defensive spinner is it's really bad against Fortress. It's really bad. Root Break does like 20% if you're lucky. Obviously, you can sort of invest, but then you become not a good like answer to Mixed Tauros and shit to like Armaldo and stuff like rock types. So there's like massive trade-offs with that, but you know it's just like weak to Toxic and like slower than Mistravus and everything. It's got a lot of problems. It does have a lot of problems, but it's got a unique typing. It's got Intimidate. It's got good natural bulk as well. There's still a lot to love about it. It has to be said. It's still got enough interesting traits that it should probably enable like some decent stall teams. But for me, it's definitely like a niche pick with like some severe flaws, but good traits to look out for. And then, so I do want to be like pretty quick with that one. I don't want this video to go on for forever anyway. I need to eat like dinner, play some Minecraft, fun stuff. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about Hitmontop, to be honest. It does have like a pretty wide move pool. Like it does get like Focus Punch and Thief and whatever. But again, like it's pretty similar to Hitmonlee, and Hitmonlee does a lot of that stuff better. But feel free to give it a whirl or give it a spin, I guess. I'm so funny. I hope nobody laughed at that or whatever. Let's move on to Xatu. So Xatu originally was in ADV 50, like back in 2017. Our knowledge of the tier was just like skyrocketed since then. It was like really early days, and it was before there was any like real limitations on Baton Pass. But these days, we've limited Baton Pass, so you can't use it with stat boosting moves, which is why you see, nonetheless, it can run Baton Pass, but only with Substitute. It's why you don't see like a Calm Mind Pass set here, or there's like Calm Mind sets that don't. Yeah. You kind of got to pick one or the other. And I'll sort of go into that in like another video as well, and I've talked about it before on like the Discord, but I find that limitation on Baton Pass is just so good for forcing Pokemon to run interesting sets more of the time. Obviously, you sort of make an argument about like Calm Mind Pass Celebi and OU's kind of interesting and like can lead to interesting dynamics with other Celebi sets in play. And yeah, I buy that. But then you've also got like a mountain of other problems with Baton Pass that still exist because of like the stupid vote that just. Anyway, in ADV 50, the limitation on Baton Pass does lead to Baton Pass sets being still useful, but something that will never become like an overwhelming, insane chain. And like something that, you definitely can use subpass to get like some serious momentum and cause some serious problems. But there is counterplay to it, since you're not like boosting up to +6 before you do it. So yeah, I think the possibility of Carmine Pass was honestly like a big part of what scared us like 4 years ago. With having Xatu, but like with re-adding it, we sort of, I think at the time we probably replaced it with Chimecho. But with re-adding it, there's sort of like two Pokemon that you like want to compare it with and say like, well, is this worth it? You got Chimecho, which is slower, but also a ground resist or ground immunity, but its typing's a bit better. It's not weak to rock, ice, and electric, and like the additional like grass resistance and Boulder Shroud don't make a huge difference, to be frank. Although on the Wish set, not bad. To have like the grass resistance for Sceptile, actually. Hey, funny how that works out. Flying type's good against Sceptile. Who knew? But yeah, you got that to compare with, and then like on the offensive end, you've got Kadabra, which is faster and also has Synchronize. So like the Carmine offensive set, which is listed here, it's really hard to justify it over Kadabra because it's just faster. And it's got Thunder Punch, so you're not stuffed by Mantine. I think the Carmine offensive Xatu set's still got some merit because you do have like a bit more bulk to play with, which is not bad. But then you got like the extra weaknesses. You're slower, and Kadabra's still outsped by like Tauros and stuff. So I mean, the strength of the matchup the strongest matchup for Kadabra really is like paralysis spam, because it tends to sort of only have like a single like proper Kadabra answer, and which you can wear down. And Synchronize plus Lumberry is just like a disgusting tool. So she's like Carmine on top of it as well against like paralysis abuse. So that's kind of the matchup that you're looking at when you're using that kind of a team. But yeah, so it was sort of like, well, there's Chimecho, there's Kadabra. For that matter, there's also Slowking when you look at Thunderwave sets. Although I do contend that like Xatu and Slowking are a fair bit more different. But in the end, the different typing adds extra weaknesses. The different move pool adds different strengths. So you can't do Carmine Heal Bell. That's still Chimecho's thing. That's still like an important niche. It's still pretty good. I mean, it does sort of compete with like Altaria already a bit as a ground immune Bella. Altaria does have like a better typing and better bulk, but hey, there's advantages. I mean, it's like an offensive threat for goodness sake, whereas Altaria isn't really unless you're Dragon Dance or mixed. So I mean, like, there's that. There's still Chimecho's still got its niche. Kadabra is honestly like the better synchronized user, but Xatu has Subpass. It's also got Wish. It's got Calm Mind Rest with Early Bird. It's got a lot of interesting things. It really does. I hope that you like that I called the Calm Mind Rest set with Early Bird Early Rest, because I thought that was cute. Early to rest, early to rise. Sounds like hell. But yeah, here's like a selection of like possible sets with it, really. I mean, I'm not super convinced necessarily of like some of these sets, necessarily like the early rest one. I'm not sure how good that would be. Common defensive one is just sort of going over. There's like Kadabra competition issues and Mantine issues. But I kind of like the idea of the Wish sets, though. Gotta be honest. In terms of its like typing and stuff as well, and like the greatest speed compared to Chimecho, it's like pretty nice actually, not just against like Sandslash, but also against Nidoqueen, which like Xatu can just outright outspeed and then have like leftover EVs for bulk. I think the early rest set that I made is meant to like outspeed Nidoqueen and still like not be too hit here, like Sludge Bomb and Rock Slide. So that there is some pretty cool stuff it can do as like a check like Nidoqueen and stuff. Although there is then like competing with Mistravas. Like Xatu's a Pokemon that it's got a lot of cool traits and it's got a lot of competition. So I'm not sure we'll always see it used in like the best slot for a Xatu, but on the other hand, I think it probably opens up a lot of new team building possibilities, just like slightly different dynamics of the structure. Like, if you're making like a subpass team and instead of going for Kadabra to abuse, you've got a subpass Xatu to help, and then you like make another change and you're like, I don't know, maybe you opt to go for like a Lanoon instead on your team to be like one of your main like subpass abusers, like stuff like that. Like it just opens up different options. Like, or maybe you use like a wish Xatu on your stall paired with, I don't know, some like Healbell Mataina, something like that. Like, yeah, there's options. There's options. Whether those are good options, I don't know, but I feel like Xatu's got enough of those options and they're like interesting, good enough that it should be here to stay from this point. So I'm honestly pretty happy with like the 3 Pokemon that were selected, even though I didn't vote for. I didn't vote for Hitmontop. I think I voted for Dugtrio over Hitmontop, which I sort of like the idea of like the fast subtoxic set. To be honest, it's like a disruptor, but yeah, I think the result is good. I think Wisdom of the Crowd, they chose pretty well here. Once we start them voting for Tentacruel at least and Minun. Sorry guys, I know there's a interesting fun Pokemon, but yeah. Anyway, I hope that this sort of inspires you to build some teams, get involved with the tier, have some fun. I mean, look, these Pokemon are so versatile. There's just so much you can explore with these Pokemon. It's like 50 Pokemon, but there's like 200 plus good sets in it because like so many Pokemon can do so many different things, and it just makes this meta game like so deep and beautiful. And I hope you'll come and be a part of it. Yeah, and give Xatu, give Hitmontop, give Sceptile a go. And by the way, we've got a team building competition with Xatu. It's comments about it in the Discord as well. But send me a direct message if a team with Xatu on it. Within the next couple of weeks, enter into the competition. We've had 2 winners so far. Not been me. Had Darth Tyros in the Tauros in the first competition. I think it was Absol actually in the Absol competition. And then LRXC won the Tauros one, I think it was. My memory's a little bit foggy. I don't have Discord open while I'm recording. But yeah, give it a go. Love to sort of see the creator's spirit. Yeah, okay, I'm kind of out of words. And I've been talking for a while. It's like nearly half an hour video. I'll be doing more stuff in like the next few days as well, so keep an eye out. I hope you enjoy. Like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord. Bye-bye. Join the season as well, actually. Okay, bye-bye, but for real.